Welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 135, and a happy new year. Welcome to 2023 as well. Yes, so today we're going to be talking about, we're going to be showing the best of 2022. I asked viewers not last week, several weeks ago now, to send in their best of 2022. And we've had about 16, 17 people send in their images. So we're going to go through them and have a feast, a celebration of photography. We all love photography. If you didn't, you wouldn't be watching this podcast, for one thing. So we're going to celebrate what we feel was our best, which wasn't necessarily that easy for everyone to actually try and choose one. Some of the comments I had were, very much along those lines. So stick with us and let's make a start. So here we are, live on YouTube, unless you happen to be watching the recordings, but if you are live, then leave a comment, let me know where in the world you are, what the weather's doing, and generally join in the chat. I can see we've got a few people in already. Jack says, hello everyone, hope you're all having a great day. Sandra joins us and says, happy 2023 everyone. Pat also says, hi everybody, nice to be back. What else have we got? Oh yeah, April says, happy new year everyone. Feago, I still haven't fully figured out how do you pronounce your name. Give me a little kind of syllable thing would be great. I would like to be able to say it properly. But Feago currently says hello everyone and happy new year. Lovely 2023. John says good day all from Columbus, Ohio. Meg says good afternoon everyone and happy new year to all. Welcome back. Stacy says good morning. Sunny and cold this morning. Here we've had unusual weather. Last week rained but warmer temperatures. Now it feels more seasonal. And Robert and Ann from Texas say howdy all. So this is great. We have people in. We have pictures ready to go. So basically what we're going to do is, as I say, it's 3 weeks. Can I believe it's 3 weeks since our last podcast? This is the longest I've ever been in the last 2.5 years without doing a podcast. But because last week was Christmas, New Year's Day, and the week before was Christmas Day. So I hope you all had a good Christmas, New Year, Hanukkah, whatever other kind of festivals, situations, celebrations you may have had, or time with your family or anything else. I hope you've had a good time. But with all that going on, it's meant that we missed haven't had the podcast. So I must admit, actually, it's sort of 3 weeks away from doing it. I'm feeling slightly rusty. Wouldn't be at all surprised if I hit the wrong buttons left, right and centre. I tend to do that anyway, so even more chance of it. I see Rosemary's joined us and says happy 2023 to all as well. So what we're going to do then is we're just going to start this new year with the best of 2023. Like I said, we've got about sort of 15, 16, 17 people have sent in images, so I'm going to go through them. It's not critique today. It's a celebration of looking at photos. But if you have questions, if you have comments, throw them into the feed, and I'll pick them up and keep kind of checking in to see. Hang on a sec. All right, Feago, just how it's spelled. Okay, brilliant. I'll go with Feago, and hope that stays right. So let's make a start. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to start with Graham. Now, Graham has sort of popped in and out over the last couple of years and does things. Graham's an old friend of mine. In fact, it's an old school friend. We used to sit at the back of the French class together. We used to sit at the back of physics class together. We used to sit at the back of the chemistry class together. So I've known Graham for over 40 years, which is a bit scary. But Graham does love to do a little bit of street photography. He's not had the chance to do a lot of late, but he's starting to get back into it. And he sent in this one, which I must admit I thought was just a really good, strong photo to kick off with. He said, difficult to choose just one image, but I went with this one of the local garage owner. It seems to draw the most comments from people for some reason. I like it because of the lighting. Getting the balance between subject and background was tricky, but seems to work, for me anyway. I like the nonchalant, relaxed pose, contrasting with the intense focus of getting that pipe lit. Yeah, I think it's an excellent one. I think I'm not surprised you feel it's a bit of a favourite from the year. That sense of, you really get the feeling of just, you're there, you're observing someone who's intent on something else. But it is a lovely balance. You've got your man at the front here, lit by the daylight. There's enough light going on in the background to know that there's a workshop behind him. It is quite dark and shadowy, but I think we can just about make out as a car or vehicle or some kind of working equipment in the background there. And that kind of gritty black and white. Gritty black and white works particularly well for this. I mean, normally, if your colour might have worked as well, depending on what the colours were. But I think that kind of gritty black and white gives it that kind of lovely documentary street photography feel to it. So great start to the year. Smug points. Yes, let's hand out smug points. Anybody who sends in an image automatically gets smug points. What I will also say is at the end of the podcast, I'm going to tell you not just what we're going to do next week, but essentially a shift. I'm doing a shift in emphasis for this year now. The podcast been going for over 2.5 years. I'm going to make a couple of subtle changes, but I'll tell you all about that at the end. So do make sure you stick around. Peter's also here as well. So I think I missed it. Did I catch you earlier, Peter? I'm not sure whether I did. But Peter Wilson's joined us. And Becca has joined us as well and says, Happy New Year all. Excellent. Right. Rosemary says, this is great, Graham. The fellow is very intriguing and I like the composition you've chosen. Good stuff. Okay, so let's move on then. And next image I want to go with is this one from another really amazingly powerful image. This one from Nadia. And Nadia said, Hi Kim, I like this one the best. I took this because the light was on Bow Fiddle rock. When processing, I wanted to show the light on the rock by making the rest dark and moody. And again, it's so dramatic, this one. It's really worked well. And not necessarily an easy thing to pull off because, there are a lot of... first of all, you've got a great composition, Nadia. That works really well. But I'm also aware that if what you've got is sunlight coming straight down, then it can tend to kind of blast everything out. And as you say, doesn't necessarily have a kind of dramatic, moody feel to it. But the way you've converted to black and white and the way you've kind of deepened the shadows in the foreground and then really played up the drama of the sky somewhat as well, taking those blues and making them very black, really adds a lovely set of texture to the sky there. So I think I can imagine the original while still being an interesting composition, probably wouldn't have had the drama there, whereas the way you've edited this really draws the attention in and creates that sense of drama. So yeah, an amazing photo, certainly one I'd be delighted with if it was in my own folder. So smug points there to you, Nadia. I think you should feel very proud of that one. Right, what am I doing here? That's what I'm doing here. So Robert says, wow, Nadia. Becca says, wow. April says, love it in black and white. And John says, love Nadia's photo. Rosemary says, spectacular, Nadia. Yes, something to be very proud of. Good stuff. Right, now, Stacy also says, love black and white, especially when it's dramatic. So, next photo we've got then is from Peter Wilson. And I love this. Now, let me show you something here, because what you're seeing is a picture of the moon. Now, who of us hasn't actually turned around and pointed our camera at the moon? And then we've had the standard problem with the fact that, generally speaking, unless we've got a really big lens, the moon is just tiny in the thing, and we zoom in and we don't get very much detail. So a nice, really kind of detailed, clear bit of moon. Except it's more than that. Let me tell you what Peter says here. Peter says, please find us attached my best photo for 2022 submission Sunday's podcast. Not necessarily my best photo, hard to define what that would be, and I'm still behind in sorting out my photos at present due to various family issues, though this was the most challenging technically and pleasing with how it turned out. Well, I think this is part of the thing. I mean, it's a recurring thing that I found throughout the submissions, people saying, well, it's not necessarily the best, but I was pleased. It challenged me, or the difficulty in trying to decide what's the best. And I always knew that was going to be a problem. And then in the reality, there never really is one best. You have several different photos which you like for several different reasons. But I still think that there is something in being able to turn around and say, in this moment that I make the decision, even if I change my mind 5 minutes later, I'm going to select this image, and then try to find a way to justify why it is. So yeah, recurring theme, but something everybody who submitted something has had to battle with. So he goes on, this is one of a sequence of photos taken of the lunar occultation of the planet Mars. An occultation is when the moon is moving through its orbit, goes in front of a star or planet, taken in the early hours. Now, you're saying, what, Mars, where are we? But here, look what happens if I zoom in. Lo and behold, we have Mars sitting there, right on the edge. How fantastic is that? So we've got our moon, and the moon is just there, almost clipping the edge of Mars. He goes on to say, taken in the early hours of a freezing windy night. Now he also didn't actually send in the timestamp here, which is 04:53 a.m. right, on the 8th of December. So on the 8th of December, you was up at 5 to 5 in the morning to take that. So absolute kudos and extra smug points to you there, Peter, for just sheer and utter determination to be up at that time in the morning on a cold. It doesn't actually have the temperature here, but we had some pretty cold temperatures in December. It says the photo shows the lunar surface close to the planet Mars. I have a couple of photos of the moon and Mars touching, but I thought I would go with this one, with the slim gap between the two looked best. I had to up the shutter speed due to the buffeting of the wind and freezing fingers. Otherwise, I would have settled for a lower ISO. So his ISO ended up being an ISO of 800, but he was also using 1/3000th of a second, which is a very fast shutter speed. But then you also have to bear in mind this is the equivalent of a 1600 mm, because he's got a big lens and then he's got a multiplier on it. You end up with a very, very long lens. And when you end up with a very, very long lens, movement becomes far more exaggerated. Now, I've talked about this before, but it's worth mentioning again. It's like, supposing I'll take this pencil here, right? And, okay, hopefully you can see that pencil a bit more clearly there. Now, if I wobble the pencil slightly, down at this end, it's moving 1 or 2 millimeters. But at this top end, it's moving 1 or 2 centimeters. So the longer the lens, the more any sense of movement becomes exaggerated. Now, we need to understand this in terms of, quite often, if we're trying to hand hold a camera, that a zoom in lens will get motion blur much more quickly. But it also works if you're zooming in on something which, and in this case, zooming in on the planet, on Mars and on the moon, that is moving across the sky, and that movement becomes exaggerated when you are zoomed right in the space of a short amount of time. It will have moved across the length of the lens, and the bigger your lens, the more it will have moved. So you can't do a nice 30-second exposure, because in 30 seconds it will have moved significantly across the length of your lens, and you will just have a smear rather than a nicely tight, detailed moon. So really tricky technical one to work all this out, but also on top of that, staying up till nearly 5 o'clock in the morning under cold, windy conditions. I'm so impressed. I'm seriously impressed. So, yeah, not surprised you feel happy with that one to be your favourite of the year. So congrats on that, and smug points aplenty, I think, there, Peter. Right, what have we got? Yeah, Roy says, in response to the previous one, Roy says, I have the worst time doing black and white. Feago says, wow, beautiful moon. Russ has joined us, says, hi everyone, sorry I'm late. Go and stand at the back of the corner with the naughty hat on. No, that's fine, Russ, you're okay. I haven't mentioned your photo yet, that's coming later. Stacy says, nice capture of the moon. One of my photography club members has a 600mm lens and gets 6 fabulous shots. Last night would have been a great opportunity. April says, oh, wow. And then Robert goes, wow, Mars, that's an incredible shot. Becca says, fantastic. Rosemary says, I was going to ask about that little orange speck, so thank you for explaining about Mars. Very cool. I commiserate with the conditions. Feago says, what great timing. Pat says, nothing is happening here. Oh, to what degree, Pat? You mean, am I not zooming in? Oh, everything gone quiet? If all else fails, try refreshing your browser. And that might sort out any problems that you got there, Pat. What else? Oh, Maggie's joined us saying Happy New Year. I know Maggie was on the phone just now, so she's managed to join us. Meg says, spectacular photo, Peter. And Russ also says, it's amazing, Peter. Very envious. Peter says, thank you all. You can even make out the polar cap on the upper right. And a couple of dark planetary features. The polar cap. Hold on one sec. I'm going to have to go back and take a little look. I wasn't right. Not that one. That one. Right. Let's just zoom. Oh, right. There's a faintly brighter patch just here. Wow. And a couple of little darker patches. So yes, you're right. I didn't even notice that bit. How cool is that? Excellent. Good stuff. Right. Okay, Pat says I'm not seeing any photos yet. Wonder why that is. I hope I have. I think I have been sharing the photos. Everybody else seems to be responding to it. Not sure what's happening then, Pat. Again, like I said, maybe try just refreshing the browser. See whether that's causing. I mean, maybe the screen is frozen or something like that. Not sure. Russ says he can see everything, so it might be on your end then, Pat. So if you can hear me but you can't see anything, then just refresh your browser, and hopefully that will sort everything. If in case you've got a frozen screen. All right. Okay. Let's move on then to Rosemary. Now, Rosemary sent in this one as her favourite one of the year. So she says, this baby barred owl, that's B-A-R-R-E-D, as in bars on it, is from the first time I got to use my new 200 to 500mm zoom lens to photograph the owls on our property. It's actually one of only a handful of times this year's batch of very shy hatchlings showed itself. So I feel very privileged to have gotten an image of it at all. Not only were this year's pair elusive, but they hung out much higher in the boughs than last year's friendly and a bold trio of owlets. I think I remember that little trio of owlets which you put in for one of the critiques or something last year. Yes, that sounds familiar. I couldn't tell you just how high they were, but it was a long way up, and it meant that I had to crop down to just a tiny percent of the original file, and my neck and shoulders were sure sore from holding that behemoth of a lens. I'm thankful to have enough to start with at 49 megapixels to give you enough pixels to work with. So she also sent me the original. So let me show you what Rosemary means by this. So this is Rosemary's original picture, and in order to get that, she's had to really, you can see, crop out a huge amount of the picture. And it is one of those advantages that if you have one of these very high megapixel cameras, you can crop in and still have some detail. Having said that, this level of detail is fine for web, but you'd never really be able to print it up to any real size. So in an ideal world, you always try and get closer to your subject. You try and get as much of the picture that you want to have within it, and try not to rely on cropping unless it's your last chance, or your only real opportunity to do so, as in the case of Rosemary here. She goes on to say, the editing was a big stretch for me, filling in the white patches of sky behind the owl with leafy bits from elsewhere in the photo. This was something Kim recommended in one of his podcasts as a way to remove distractions. So what we can see here then is if we actually zoom in on here, we can see that there is quite a lot of bright patch up here, and you're right, that does become very distracting, especially so by photoshopping in other bits of leaf, out of focus leaf into that space. That then allows us here to get drawn with our attention, you manage to lighten up the owl a bit, and by darkening down, getting those extra bits of tree and leaf into there, it means that we can see the owl quite clearly here. There's a little bit of tail sticking down at the other side of this mossy bit of branch as well. So yeah, definite smug points for you there. Really nice photo there, Rosemary. Yeah, I think you've done an amazing job. Hopefully now you'll have more fun with. If you're having problems with a handheld, maybe this is the time to start using a tripod as well. Get yourself a tripod. If you know they're in the tree, put it there, because you do want to be careful about, if you've got one of these big heavy lenses as well as your shoulders, it can really do in your wrists as well. So don't be frightened of using a tripod. But yeah, thanks for sending that one in, Rosemary. Right. And in fact, actually, yeah, so where do we go? So it says, okay, April says, so cute. Russ says, cuteness overload alert. Pat says, beautiful, wonderful model too. Stacy says, this is a great shot of an owl. They're very hard to capture. Russ says, I have to say, I rather like the context given by the original image. Peter says, nice photo. Feago says, amazing editing. Got to learn a lot from this session. And Pat says, how did the hole happen? The hole. What hole? I think Pat has joined earlier and is currently lagging about 10 to 15 minutes behind the rest of us. Because I think Pat there with the hole happening is talking about that rock formation that Nadia photographed. So in about 10 or 15 minutes, Pat's going to catch up with the fact that I'm talking to her at a staggered date. So don't worry, it'll work out in the end. Right, okay, as long as I know what's going on. Now, there was something else actually. Rosemary did say, I look forward to seeing the wonderful work others have accomplished this year and hope you, Kim, will share your favourites as well. So actually, I wasn't planning on sharing my favourites. What I will do is I will show you what my favourite of the year was. But some of you have already kind of seen the... basically what I did was I put up this one as the banner image for the best of 2022, because at the moment this is my favourite image. The rest of the set that came from this shoot won't be coming out for another week or two. While this was shot back in November, and it was a fashion shoot done at Rosefield Mills, which is where I actually did the Peaky Blinders shoot from a few years ago. Some of you may remember. Now, it was a great warehouse, but while it was mainly a fashion shoot, I got the chance to, I thought I was just going to fire off a few kind of head portrait shots, and Eva here, the model, I really love it. It's great. I got the backlighting I like. I got this really moody, the way that I've edited it. In the end, I wanted to go for this really moody, black and white, cinematic, edgy, cyberpunk kind of feel to it. And I felt like I achieved everything that I wanted in this. I spent a lot of time doing the editing, doing the converting. And in the end, I look at this and I kind of find myself going, oh, wow, well, I did this. You know, there's a little bit of surprise that I managed to kind of create something like this. The interesting thing about this is when I have put this up on social media, it's got an okay response, but yeah, some people like it, some people don't. And that the thing that the reason for showing you this and saying about it is that it's worth understanding that we have a different criteria when we judge our own photos than the way other people judge our photos. We can look at a photo and feel incredibly pleased with it because we know the time, the energy, the effort, or whatever, the problems we had to overcome in order to create it. We were chasing something and we know whether we then achieved it or we went beyond what we thought we could achieve, which was the case in this one. This went beyond what I thought I was going to be able to achieve. And as such, for me, it becomes a very special photo. For anybody else, they're looking at the photo on the merits as it stands on its own without the knowledge of all the background to it, of whatever obstacles I ever had to overcome, of what I was chasing and how close I got to what I was chasing. Nobody else has any of that. Nobody else cares. Everybody else, it's just a case of either it does it for them or it doesn't. And so this is why there is always a mismatch between what you put in for your photos, what you tend to, how often have you put in what you think is a fantastic photo, you were so pleased with it, it's your greatest photo ever, and the response is never as strong as you expect it to be. Or other times where you put in a photo which was, you got, but it doesn't do it for you because there was no real challenge, it was just one of those easy photos. And yet suddenly everybody else is going, there's a great response to it. And the frustration from that mismatch is very common. And this photo that I've just shown you is another example of that. You need to know that no matter what level you get to with your photography, that's always going to be the case. And in some ways, the higher the level you move up, the more you move up your photography, the more that becomes the case. That you have a different eye. You have learned different things. Your brain works in a different way. You have a different set of expectations of what you want out of a photo that people who aren't photographers don't necessarily understand, or even other photographers who shoot in different disciplines don't understand, or even other photographers who shoot in the same disciplines but don't have your taste don't understand. So in the end, a lot of photography, the ones that are going to please you the most, are not necessarily the ones that are going to please everybody else. In fact, it can be quite rare that there is actually any direct correlation between you feeling really pleased with what you created and what somebody else is going to think is a really good piece of work. So, people might go, it's a nice piece, but they're never going to feel as emotionally attached to it as you are. So always worth remembering to keep that one in mind. So, what else have we got here? Back with the owl. Feago says, owls in the daytime. Rosemary says, yes, this is a daytime shoot of an owl. And she says, owls, my stereotype is broken that owls sleep during the day. Becca says, love it, loads going on, incredible lighting, very beautiful. Andy's joined us and says, greetings, late to the party. Glad you made it, Andy. We've not talked about your photo yet, so you're fine, stick around. April says, Kim, your photo could be seen in a magazine. Thank you. I have ideas. I would love. I can imagine that working well, but it's then finding the right kind of magazine for it. Rosemary says, very dramatic. Love the light, especially the starburst. Can you explain why the catch lights in the eye are the shape they are? Okay, let me just go back to that photo then and try and see what you mean. So in this one, why are the catch lights the shape they are? Basically, the light source, as you can see, is coming from, we've got two light sources. We've got one from over here, which is where we've got the starburst effect. The other one is coming from above and slightly behind her. So if you were looking at her from face on, she would have that kind of Rembrandt lighting. You can see where the light is cutting across the nose and creating this triangle under the eye. But we're not seeing her from straight on, we're seeing. So this means the light is coming from slightly behind. So the catch light, in that sense, is just catching the eyeball on the top there. And then this bit here is a reflection of the floor, because it was a concrete floor. The light that's coming down from above is bouncing off and creating a reflection in the eye. So because of the way the light is coming here, we're not seeing her straight on, we're getting catch light and we're getting reflections. And I will say here, I have enhanced that in the editing process as well. We end up with an eyeball that doesn't quite look like an eyeball and gives it that kind of weird, almost android robotic. It adds that kind of cyberpunk feel to it that I was particularly pleased with. So but I haven't added anything to the lighting, but I have enhanced the way the reflections were there. So, but it's all to do with the angle that the light's coming from compared to where she is. So I hope that answers you on that one, Rosemary. So where else? Russ says, great drama in the image, love the lighting and just enough detail in the background to inform the viewer without being a distraction. Thank you. Also, the light on the cheek is gorgeous, says Rosemary. Peter says, nice photo, Kim, looks a bit futuristic sci-fi. Yeah, that's cyberpunk thing I was going for. Sandra says, of your favourite photos of the year, this is the one I like the most as well. Very dramatic, and thank you. Pat says no owl, for instance. Okay, so Pat's still running behind. Rosemary says, oh, the reflection on the floor, was wondering what it was, and she finds it kind of disturbing. And he says Blade Runner. Yeah, I mean, this is it. The feeling of it is always going to be sort of slightly different depending on what appeals to you and what doesn't appeal to you. Everybody's got a sort of slightly different feel to it. Now, what I will just say is, if anybody's interested and you didn't catch it before, if you're wanting to know what I put together a blog post of my best of 2022. If you're wanting to know what are my that one I singled out as my single favourite, but I put together a collection of about I can't remember now, a dozen or 15 photos of my favourite, which I do every year at the beginning of every year. If you want to go to my blog, which you'll find just up there, yeah, kimayres.blogspot.com. Currently up there, you'll find my best of 2022, where I've put up a dozen or more photos of my favourites that I took across the year, and a little paragraph explanation to go with any of them. In fact, I'll tell you what I will do, I can just quickly copy and I'll just paste that into the comments here. So if anybody's interested later, you can go and click on that, and that will take you to the blog post where you can see other photos. So anyway, that's there for that if you're interested. So that's for those who are interested. So we better move on. We're already half an hour in and I've only got through 5 photos. Okay, so next up then we have Stacy. Let's go to Stacy. So Stacy says, my best photograph of the year, a tent town near Aysbury Park, is called Ocean Grove. These tent houses are half tent and half structure. The tent part is the living quarters and the rear has a kitchen and a bathroom. Every year the same people come out and rent these for $6,000 for the whole summer season. So it's tents but more. There's do you have glamping in America? There's a phrase I remember cropping up back in festivals several years ago. There's camping, where you take your own tent, and then there's glamping, which is like kind of a glamorous camping. Where there are certain companies and they provide tents which are way more than tents. They're super fantastic. They might have electricity, they might have running water, they might have an indoor loo, these kind of things. So it's camping for those who don't really want to just be in a tent but still want to kind of feel like they're getting a bit of the tent experience, but they've all got all the mod cons and comforts. So this looks like a kind of an extension of that, really. So if there's an actual sort of fully proper building, and then the tent part becomes like a kind of a bit of an awning or an extension, or like a conservatory bit tagged onto the front. So very regimented, very all kind of laid out. And then you people pay $6,000 for the summer to be there. Wow, I suppose. I guess it must be in a nice area that everybody wants to kind of come and visit. But yeah, nice photo, Stacy. Smug points to you there. I think that you get a nice sense of the regimented sense of that you've got them all in a row. I like the angle that you've got, so it sort of disappears. You get that sense of length and you get that sense of depth of them just sort of heading on almost for infinity. A nice sort of sense of colour. Got all the flags hanging out of everyone as well. I can see there's little hedgerows here as well. Obviously sort of, and different people have got sort of different front ends to these. There's even is that like a wee picket fence there in front? So obviously these get customised a bit as well. So yeah, fun kind of interesting thing. So thanks for sending that one in, Stacy. That's really interesting. So where are we? April says, I like it, very different. Glamping sounds more like my speed. Viji's joined us and says, evening everyone, from a chilly night in Puna. There's me. I'm sure you've told me how to pronounce this before, and I'm embarrassingly not. But anyway, Viji, I know Viji is in north of India rather than south of India, visiting your brother. Hope that's all going well, Viji. Delighted you could make it along. Rosemary says this makes your brain start asking a lot of questions about who is staying there. Yeah, that's for sure. You kind of think that yes, when you see that, it's a holiday. People have paid to go there. So what kind of person pays to go and stay in a place like that? All right, you're okay, Viji. Haven't put up your picture yet, so So where are we now? Okay, so let's move on. And next one. Now, Gareth sent one in and said, I've recently given my 7-year-old son, Iestyn. Now, I'm hoping this is how you pronounce it, because it's spelled Iestyn. Iestyn. Anyway, I've recently given my 7-year-old son, Iestyn, my old Nikon D3400 and let him loose on auto for now. And this is his favourite shot of the year. So this isn't Gareth's favourite shot, this is his son's favourite shot, which is a fantastic shot of a robin sitting in a chair. Really kind of nicely all puffed out, beautiful red breast showing there. A little bit of editing here to do a kind of inverted vignette, which helps then draw your attention into the robin in the centre. So, yeah, fun photo. And I think certainly for your son there, I think that notion of wild, and it's really exciting with wildlife photography, that notion the first time you actually manage to capture something which isn't out of focus or flying away or disappearing into... I mean, I have so few reasonable wildlife photos. Nearly all my photos are of the backs of animals as they're disappearing into the trees or flying away. My reactions just aren't there for wildlife photos. So on the odd occasion when I've got a picture of a squirrel somewhere, which I'm so pleased with. It's not the greatest squirrel photo in the world, but it's the greatest squirrel photo for me. Because you got any idea how difficult it is to capture squirrels? Unless you're a wildlife photographer, you know, it's extraordinarily difficult. So yeah, well done to your son there, and great photo. Smug points there for getting that lovely robin with your dad's camera. We've got, Peter says very colourful, April says cute puffball, Rosemary says wow, we have a budding photographer master on our hands, Stacy says I like how you put the vignette in white, Russ says very seasonal and well fed robin, great shot. Stacy also says good shot for your son. Cool, right, okay, so let's move on. Oh, next one then is Meg. So my daughter Meg sent in this one. Now Meg wanted to put something in, the best photo of the year, and last year, some of you may remember, around midsummer, we did a self-portrait challenge, and I have to say I was particularly impressed with this one. So the black and white portrait is actually one I took of Meg about 10 years ago-ish, I can't remember exactly when, but 10 or 12 years ago I took a photo of Meg. She was just finishing it off an ice cream. You can just see the end of the cone there. And different glasses obviously, and she's a bit younger, but I took that photo, and it's one of these we happened to have printed up and put on. And what Meg decided to do was to do a selfie with her phone of her next to the photo of her, and then with her eyes hanging off the end of her nose, so she's got more or less the same expression going on as well. I thought that was really creative. And then an extra little bit of fun here is the reflection in the picture on the wall actually has the reflection of the selfie of her phone. You can see here bits of her phone here, which has got her and then her picture of the my picture of her reflected in that as well. So we've essentially got 1, 2, 3, 4 versions of Meg in the same photo. So to do that just with a kind of quick selfie on the phone, I was incredibly impressed with. So smug points to you there, Meg. I'm not surprised that this one ends up as in your kind of best of 2022. Excellent photo, and thanks for sending that in. Where are we? Oh, April says love it, Meg. Robert says awesome photo, Meg. Stacy says good job, Meg. Photograph within a photograph. Sandra says lovely photo. Peter also says nice one, Meg. Rosemary says I remember liking this photo when you submitted it, Meg. Well done. Anytime a photo sticks in our memory, you know you've accomplished something special. Viji says picture in a picture, beautiful capture. Pat says beautiful, Meg. Pat, I'm guessing you caught up with us then. And Russ says fantastic idea, Meg. And Feago says so creative. Brilliant. Okay, so let's move on. Next one then is Russ. So Russ sent in this one, which is a lot of fun. So Russ said, tricky this Kim, always hard to choose just one photo from the whole year of shooting. This is what I was talking about earlier. We always have a problem of trying to narrow it down. The image I've chosen is probably not my best photo from the year, but the one I was most pleased with. And I think that, you know, again, that kind of it echoes what I was saying earlier. You know, it's this idea that in the end, what counts as our best, and for a lot of the time, it's the one that we feel we've managed to make advances with. As some of you may know, most of my time is spent capturing action sports, and I rarely get involved with portraits or street photography. And it's true, Russ. I mean, for a best of 2022, I was half expecting to see some kind of car in midair flying over a bump or something or other. Goes on to say, back in September, I attended a 1940s weekend at Minehead Station in Somerset, which offered me a perfect opportunity to give it a go. This photo is of Ian Dawson, better known professionally as Viv the Spiv. He was a fantastic, authentic character, and I was particularly pleased with this shot as I feel it really captured his sense of mischief. And yeah, I absolutely hear you. So, a 1940s weekend, you've got this guy who dresses up, creates the character Viv the Spiv, and I was going to say what a spiv is, but actually I've just realised that Russ goes on to say, to add some context for anybody not familiar with the term spiv, S-P-I-V, it's a slang term for a man, generally a flashy dresser, who earns a living through the sale of black market goods. Back in World War II, when spivs were known for selling rationed goods such as stockings, chocolates, tea, petrol coupons, and watches. So back during the war, there was a lot of rationing going on. There was a lot of people, there were certain people who would sell black market goods. So dodgy salesman as such, somebody who would kind of, so this idea of, and there's a kind of caricature almost of the guy who would sort of roll up his sleeve and have a whole bunch of watches on and say, yeah, want to buy a watch? And you get these kind of, perhaps he's got them off some of the American GIs, or he's done a deal, or he's got something from a heist somewhere that somebody else stole some stuff and he's selling them off cheap. So you had that character back in while the war was going on. There were a lot of people playing around with it, making money out of the black market and the chaos. So brilliant. Clearly this guy is absolutely doing the character. He's putting on the expression. He's playing up to the camera for you. But it's not just the case of playing up to the camera. The fact is, you've caught it. You've managed to capture that. Really nice composition here. The fact that you're playing with the diagonals. You're allowing the arms to come down here. So in your kind of diamond shape, we've got the verticals behind, which kind of anchor the space, but then he's at an angle here like this. And as we talked before, that notion of diagonals add energy, movement to the sense of, and dynamism really, to a sense of a picture. He's winking, he's playing into the camera. It's a really fun shot. And just to add on to that, Pat, our lovely Pat here, is actually from Minehead herself, and on top of that, Pat is old enough to remember the spivs, and says, I remember spivs well, and you've captured the essence there, Russ. So extra smug points to you there. So great shot there, Russ, and thanks for sending that one in. So Meg says very much, thank you very much for your kind words. Andy says, love this one. April says, humorous one. Russ, Andy says, lots of character and engagement. Nailed it. Rosemary says, great job, Russ. What a wonderful capture of personality. Becca says, the charisma. Nice portrait. Pat says, a spiv personified. Peter says, nice. Feago says, seems like he just theft or stole all of them, feeling proud, getting done hard work to get them. Amazing capture. And Russ says, many thanks, Kim, and everyone for your kind comments. Excellent. Cool. Okay, let's move on then. So Feago herself is next up. So now, sent in 2 pictures. Now I did say send in 1, and but in a way this kind of, it comes back to this problem of, which one do you choose? So I sent back, so well, let me know which one. And she said, well, actually, I don't know. I couldn't really decide. And it's the thing about, they both have an entirely different feel. So I will show both, because it, in a way, it kind of sums up that problem of having more than one here, which is, so this one, this is a bride who is, the bride is my aunt, who asked me to capture the most beautiful moment of her life. She was delighted with my work. So even though it's taken on a phone, beautiful shot of Feago's aunt on her wedding day. the other photo was this one, to which she said, and the second one gives me goosebumps because when you look down a ladder, it's really breathtaking, but when you look up, the destination seems to be really beautiful, and also because it seems to be a perfect shot, the one I imagined it to be. And so here again you go. So this is I think it's back to this notion of it's what are you chasing, and how well did you manage to achieve it, and it's a sort of slightly different photo. You know, this kind of photo you can feel really pleased with, but actually really what you're wanting in this case is you're wanting the bride to really like it. Does she like it most? That's the most important part, or maybe the family members or whatever. The photo is less about you, whereas this photo I think is you. And in a way, if you're going to narrow it down to one, I would have said to go for this one. Not necessarily because it's the best photo, but because it's the photo which is more about what you were particularly chasing. And that idea that, you know, you always find it interesting if you can look down a ladder, but also if you look up a ladder, I find, you know, that you get taken to places. There's a notion beyond what a ladder is, but the ladder is a journey. There's a psychological element to this as well. There's a sense that you're going somewhere. A ladder takes you to somewhere. And part of that is in your mind at the point that you're taking the photo. Why does this excite you? Because of all these other thoughts that are with you when you take the photo. So we're looking up the ladder. We've got the tree at the top. Nice composition. So yeah, I smug points to you there. But in terms of making that decision, I think ultimately, always with a photo, there's an element of who's going to be looking at it. And sometimes the best photo is it achieves what you want to achieve because other people liked it. But I think that the fun part really is what's the best photo that you did for yourself, which is the one where you go, you know what, I'm really pleased with. Even if nobody else really responds to it in the same way, what did I like the best? And I think in terms of when you talk about these two photos, I think probably this is the one which is tapping into what you were specifically looking for. I think you probably managed to achieve more. So I hope that gives you a few thoughts and ideas there. So April says, oh, very pretty dress. Viji says, quite humorous, Russ, lovely. Russ says, I love the bride shot. I would love to see one with eye contact too. And the ladder has quite a surreal feel to it. Viji also said, what a perspective. Yeah, that looking straight up I think is always quite interesting. I think also, I mean, the bride shot, also that idea of eye contact, I think it's another interesting one with the notion of portraits. There's the notion of portrait when you're looking at somebody and they're not looking at the camera, or they are looking at the camera. And they have an entirely different energy. When you look at a portrait where they're not looking at the camera, you are a voyeur, you are a watcher, you are looking at something, and the person who you're looking at doesn't know you're looking at them. When the subject is looking into the lens, then when you look at the portrait, you react differently to it. You feel that there is an engagement, there is a connection in a different way. And so the energy is always different, and it can be quite fun. If you get the chance to photograph anyone, I always try to do a photo where they're not looking at the camera, do a photo where they are looking at the camera. And even though it might be as different as this and this, the energy can still be that much different. Even if all the other conditions, the angle of the head, the lighting conditions, the background, the camera settings are all identical, the energy will be different. And it's always worth doing that, because sometimes the photo will work better with one kind of energy rather than another. Sometimes you will even use both photos depending on the circumstances they need to be used for. Okay, Feago says, I'll be happy to share. Viji says, beautiful Indian bride. Peter says, nice colourful bride photo. And Feago says, thank you very much, everyone. Cool. Okay, let's move on now to Jacqui. So, Jacqui has been experimenting with portraiture much more this year. Unfortunately, she's mostly doing it on a Sunday afternoon. That seems to be her time to be able to get hold of the models and do the stuff. So she, for the most part, Jacqui now isn't able to sort of attend the live ones. This is Jacqui from South Africa, but she does still regularly tune in and follow on catch up, and I get emails from her, and so Jacqui, I know you'll be watching this on catch up, so thanks very much for continuing to take part. So Jacqui says, this is my entry for the best image of the year, although as always it was difficult to choose just one. He says, but I know Kim gets angry if we submit more than one. Angry? I don't get angry. I might give you a raised eyebrow, but I won't. Angry isn't really my side of things. And certainly not in here. This was my first shoot with Shivani, one of my models I scouted to do creative shoots with. She left such a great impression that she has become one of my firm favourites to photograph. And I think that's an interesting one because, you know, sometimes there are some people I think who think that models are just models and that it's you hire a model or you work with a model and they just, it's like having a mannequin and you just sort of move it into place and then take the photo. Just a kind of living version of something like this, really. But it isn't. A model is a person, and a person with personality, and with all people, there are different levels at which we connect to different people. And there are some people you're going to connect with, and some people you're going to struggle to connect with, and some people you will never be able to connect with, and some people that you can connect to on some levels. And as long as you don't discuss or try and connect on other levels, you'll be fine. And I think finding a good model, somebody you can work with, is really good. Is really useful. It changes, it elevates the level of photography, the places you can go, because you start to get inspired by the person who's in front of you. So that connection between photographer and model can be really, really important. And if the connection isn't there, the photos are never going to quite be as good as they could have been. Both sides might be trying really hard, but when you do get a good connection between the model and the photographer, then everything sort of lifts to another level. So great that you managed to find that. Yeah, here's one where, again, you can see now with this one, Shivani is looking straight into the camera. And now imagine for a moment she was looking away from the camera, and you can immediately get that sense of just how different the energy would be if we go back to talking about that notion of the bride, or even with Russ's photo where he's got Viv the Spiv looking straight into the camera. So, and Jacqui goes on to say, I decided to delve into portraiture last year and really enjoyed it thoroughly, so we'll be carrying on with it again this year in full swing. Well, looking forward to seeing more of the photos that hope you carry on sending some in, Jacqui. So it's my points there. Thank you. So what have we got here? Feago says amazing model skills. Andy says subtle lighting on this one. Robert says this is my favourite of your portraits too, Jacqui. Russ says superb portrait, really great image. The pose, the lighting, the expression all work for me. Sandra says beautiful lighting. Stacy says love the portrait shot, great lighting, always well done. Becca says amazing work. Viji says wow, Jacqui. And Rosemary says Jacqui, what a beautiful light sculpting the face of this lovely model. So there you go, Jacqui. Again, very positive feedback on this one. Right, okay, so let's move on then to John. And John says, it is not so much my favourite shot of 2022, but more my favourite subject of 2022. I took many shots here from every angle. It is the nicest looking lighthouse I've ever come across in my travels. It's a Portland Head lighthouse, Portland in Maine. The issue was the large amounts of people and the fact that it was the middle of the day. It's an issue that travel comes with travelling. I talked to a local photographer who I envied because he could just shoot here at just about any time, including sunset, sun up and dramatic weather. I ended up buying a photo from him. We're moving way back from the subject, reduce the crowd and people impact a lot. Okay, and that's I think this is a really interesting one, John. So what happened is you found a place, and you go, hey, I love this lighthouse, I love this place. But if you're traveling, if you don't actually live on the doorstep of the place, what do you do about the lighting? You know, I think I absolutely get that thing that there are places where you can go and you know that if you could just be back there under different lighting conditions and different weather conditions, you could get the wow shot that you're really trying to chase. Unfortunately, for whatever reasons, you aren't going to be there under the right lighting conditions and under the right weather conditions. And so what you then end up doing is saying, well, okay, what can I do with what I've got? And one of the things you say, as well as the fact that, you know, I mean, this is a midday, so you can't make use of long shadows, you can't make use of dramatic sky, but it is a big, bold shape. But you've also got this problem of people. It's noon, it's your midday, is people wandering around all over the place. And what you've done is you, rather than getting close in, you've taken a step back to try and get a bigger sense of the building. And what that's managed to do is make all the people very small and less relevant in them. And for that sense, I think you've done a really good job, John. I think that you make a lot of good decisions in that when you're making it. I think in the comment, when you put this in Facebook, somebody pointed out the fact that you've got somebody in a red shirt here, who then grabs the attention somewhat. As we've talked before, red is one of those just instant colour grabbers which kind of grabs your attention and draws your eye. Now, the question is then, does that enhance or does that detract from the thing? Now, when we're looking here, when we pull back, if you happen to notice the person in the red shirt, you do notice them. Now, there's two ways you can come at there. If you think, one of the things it does do is it then gives you a scale, because by having some people here, it does give you that sort of slightly better sense that, well, okay, this person's here, but then, you know, this is the lighthouse. Because the lighthouse can feel slightly swamped by that we've got all the rocks here, it doesn't necessarily look as tall as you think it might. It's sitting slightly lower down the slope than this house, so the house is probably sitting proportionally slightly higher to the lighthouse than it would have if they were sort of exactly even. So there's a kind of, and that sort of slight curve down of the rock and the fence there, I think gives this slight illusion of the lighthouse being slightly shorter than it is. But when you place the person next to it, it helps to kind of reinforce that sense of actually this is a tall building. Alternatively, if you feel that the red is getting in the way, then quite simply in your editing software, you can just either, you know, subtly desaturate just the red shirt, take it down to a kind of grey or reddish grey or something like that. You take it down enough to the point whereby it no longer grabs the eye. But whether you want it grabbing the eye or not is then down to your particular decision on that. But, you know, great shot, and smug points to you there, and thanks very much for sending that one in, John. Right, where am I? Let's close that, and here we go. Where are we? Rosemary says, best to all for the new year, need to scoot, internet's misbehaving, and she's got to leg it. Okay, well, hopefully get you back next week there, Rosemary. April says, love lighthouses, looks nice. Viji says, wish I could see more, a landscape maybe, very fetching. Andy says, maybe try ND filters and a long exposure to lose people in the daytime. And that's an interesting one, yes, because the problem is if you were to go for, say, a 10 or 20 second exposure, then during that time anybody will have moved across and out of the way, and essentially it becomes invisible, so you can lose people. But the problem is you're in midday light, so the chances of being able to do a 20-second exposure is just about zero, because even if you're you're going for your narrowest aperture and your highest or your lowest ISO, is still not going to be enough. But that's where a filter, so a neutral density filter, it's the equivalent of like sticking sunglasses or across your lens, in which case that might actually allow you to then do a longer exposure even under daylight conditions. So yeah, it's a great idea, Andy, that one. Viji says, I love the red. Sandra says, the photo highlights the challenge of photography when you're on holiday and can't pick the time of day. Yeah, certainly go back to Andy's comment on that one, Sandra. Russ says, I would be interested to see what's to the right of the lighthouse if it was in a landscape format and had more space to the right. Would you then see the edge of the rocks and finish the image off? April's got to leg it as well. That's okay, April. We'll watch the rest on catch up, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Right, okay, so next we're going to move on to Anne. And Anne has sent in this rather wonderful... hold on one sec. Obviously, there we go. Anne has sent in this rather wonderful photo and says... here's my photo for 2022. It was taken at the Louis Vuitton Foundation in Paris. This is one of those very rare images where everything fell into place and the editing just worked the way I wanted it to. It was a joy to create and was selected for the Dallas Center for Photography Color Play exhibit. Oh, congratulations on that. Everything about this image was fun. Oh, that's brilliant, Anne. I'm delighted. It is. It's a great photo, and it's this sort of bold orange. And then this fantastic silhouette got the woman walking here. It looks like there's a sign there. It's probably talking about some kind of exhibit. And this reflection here, and the way you've edited it so that the reflection, so there's a wonderful geometry to this. We've got the geometry, we've got the color, we've got the light, we've got the shade, and that notion of the kind of the subtleness of it's not, you've not gone for a kind of full black. So, there's still soft and subtle colours and bits of detail in the foreground. She's virtually silhouetted, but there are still little bits coming out in there. And so it kind of adds to a sort of sense of mystery and drama and what have you. So, yeah, wonderful photo there, Anne. And congrats on getting it into the Dallas Centre of Photography exhibition. Really cool. Nice photo. Smug points for you there. Russ says, very dramatic, great capture. Andy says, lovely image. Viji says, wow, this one is exceptional. And Peter says, nice image, well captured. Cool. Okay, so next up then, we go from one slightly silhouette to a lot of silhouettes, and we're into Viji's favourite photo of the year. Silhouette, so many underlying stories. I remember you sending this one in for critique a few weeks back, or a month or two back, I can't remember now. Time seems to be doing funny things. Anything pre-Christmas now seems like months and months ago, even though it was only 3 weeks back. But yeah, this is a great photo, Viji, and yeah, not surprised you're pleased with this one. You should. I think there is this sort of whole sense of all these different stories that are going on, where people, and with the arm going up, people facing each other. This person looks like scratching their face. These people lost in conversation. This person head tilted back, following up to whatever this person's talking to. It feels multiple stories in one. So yeah, fun capture that one, Viji. Yeah, smug points there. Thank you very much for sending that one in. A couple of things going on here. I'm aware that I can feel my throat getting a bit dry. There have been various coughs and colds going around the house, so I might be at the beginning of something. And also we've still got a few more photos to go through yet, so I'll speed up a little bit, I think. But where are we go? Maggie said beautiful image, and Robert says, Anne says, thank you. Stacy says, love the reflection and colours. Stacy also says, good shot, Viji. Russ says, love this one, Viji. So much to think about. A great narrative here. And Viji says, thank you, Kim and everyone. Okay, let's move on then. And the next one is from Janet. And Janet said, a misty autumn sunrise near Huntsville in Ontario. Said, let's zoom in a little bit here. Says, I found the location because I got lost going to the bed and breakfast the previous night. That's great. You're heading off somewhere, and then you got to get a bit lost, and then find a great location and think, right, okay, got to get back there first thing in the morning. The footprints were because someone had left a drink cup on the picnic table. I did a shoot before and after walking out to remove it. Right, okay, so so she's done a shot before, then she's gone out to pick up the picnic cup, come back and notice the footprints and taken another shot. And says this was my preferred image. And so yeah, that's an interesting one. So that's a great, if you can do that, you can get that opportunity to do under different conditions. So beautiful misty shot, early morning light, and I do like these footprints. They give that sense of there's nobody there, but there's the remains, there's the residue, there's the hint, there's the mark of somebody that was there, just left. And so it creates a presence in the absence. And it's not getting quite kind of philosophical here. Immediately I'm thinking of bits of Sartre from back when I studied philosophy, where it's the absence that defines the presence. So if you go into a cafe to meet your friend and your friend isn't there yet, your whole experience of the cafe is shaped by the absence of your friend. So something not being there can very much shape what is there. And in this case, we have the footprints, which immediately makes us think of what left the footprints, who left the footprints, the fact that somebody has been there, even though there's nobody in the photo. So, plus also, it's a beautiful light and lovely mist and a lovely composition. So, super smug points to you there, Janet, for that one. Nicely done. Russ says another one to think about, real sense of mystery. Sandra says very atmospheric, and Stacy says it's that time of year. I had a nasal drip from allergies. It caused an infection. It's all over. I'm glad you passed your infection there, Stacy. Janet says thank you. Excellent. Russ says conjures up memories of so many American horror movies. I guess there's a few of those. Yes, start to take a step out and something will reach out from below and grab you. John Harvey says great shot there of the dog and the mist. Right, okay, so on to Peter. Now, do you remember, I hope some of you do, earlier this, well, not this year, last year now, Peter, KPK, Klaus Peter Kubik from Germany, gave us gave me a whole bunch of information to talk about architectural photography. And then we did an architectural photography challenge. So I asked Peter if he wanted to submit a favourite of his, and he sent in this one, which I thought was really rather special. And so Peter says, I don't know if this is my best shot of the year, but it's a photo I like very much. Here two genres meet, architecture and street photography. In addition, the person wears an outfit that matches the colour of the building. And for anybody who watched, and if you didn't see it, go back when you finish watching this, go back to the my YouTube page, click on the Understanding Photography playlist, and go back I can't remember exactly, a few months, but you'll find there's an architectural challenge, and there's the one before that, which is where we're talking about architectural photography. And Peter's got I love the way he's got an eye, but also the way he then edits the photos. Goes very these kind of geometrical shapes, and this is very much a Peter kind of photo. The colour scheme he's used, the way he's edited it, but catching this person in the middle here, and we've got this fantastic reflection, and I don't know how much has been done in the editing to make it so, but her hair, belt, and little bits of reflection in the clothing with this kind of lovely kind of rich reddish pink, also echoed then in the back here, and then the black and white of the rest of the outfit being echoed in the rest of the walls, and then this lovely, amazing black mobile hanging down up there. So very strong lighting coming down as well. Very graphic design, very powerful. So excellent shot there, amazing one, Peter. So thank you very much for sending that one in to us. Viji says she's got to run off now because she's heading back down to Chennai, to southern India. Have a great year, everyone. I will catch up with the video once I'm on board my train. Glad you could make it for as long as you could, Viji. Sandra says, very dramatic. I like this a lot. Russ says, love this photo. Very dramatic and powerful. Okay, so we're now going to move on to Roy. And Roy sent in this lovely black and white photo as well. And I love, this has got an awful lot going for it, Roy. So Roy says, this is my favourite shot from last year. This monster of a machine is nicknamed Oddball, is looked after by the Friends of St Albans. BE 1150 walking dragline. It walked backwards up at a blazing maximum speed of 0.2 miles per hour. So this whole thing moved at 1/5 of a mile an hour. On open cast mining sites. It's not normally accessible to the Great Unwashed, but I was able to get permission to photograph it at its last working site in Swellington near Leeds. Unfortunately, I only had a 2-hour time slot in midday in August, so the lighting was a tad harsh. So, much like John's problem, sometimes you've just got to make do with the lighting that you've got. But I think what you've done here is, because of the way that you've your black and white conversion, you've made the blues of the sky very dark, so that really helps create the contrast. So this is a really good black and white conversion here, Roy, and I think you should feel pleased with that. And there's a lovely sense of this interesting, the soft texture of the grasses in the front and along the side contrast beautifully with the hard metal, and again the organic movement of the grasses and the very man-made strong straight lines of this, and a beautiful angle, that sort of sense of depth. Just we're at the front here, and it's just going all the way down the back here. Got the big tread tracks there or something, looks like, perhaps. Somebody getting out of the car, didn't notice that one first time round. But yeah, really strong composition there, and really nicely converted to black and white. So yeah, I think you should feel pleased with yourself. Good smug points there for you, Roy, for certain. Great photo of the year, that one. Sandra says, very dramatic. I like this a lot. Russ says, love this photo, very dramatic and powerful. And Pat says, fantastic, Roy, not your typical Yorkshire. Stacy also says, beautiful, Roy. Okay, so next we'll move on to Robert. Now, Robert sent in this one. So this was taken last year in Mississippi at my father's house. He has several hummingbird feeders, and usually about 20 hummingbirds buzz around in the afternoon. This picture was taken around the golden hour. I didn't have a tripod or a way to make the subjects go to one feeder, so I had to be patient and stand still at one feeder. After about 800 photos, at high speed, I believe that this is the best shot. Most were blurry. There is no way to get a hummingbird to sit still. The next time I return, I will use a tripod and a remote trigger. By the way, this is a picture of the bird flying backwards off the feeder. And this goes to show, I mean, it's an excellent shot, this one, Robert. I really like it. And the detail you've managed to capture in this is superb. And really, you've got the blurred out background, so good settings. You've got the right shutter speed in order to capture the detail. You've also got the right depth of field in order to blur out the background so that the bird stands out against the background. It feels a bit closely cropped in. I would like maybe a little bit more space just at the front of it. Looking at the bit that's sticking out here, I'm assuming that I would assume that the bird feeder is immediately in front of it, perhaps that. Now, actually, I don't have to assume, because Robert did, in fact, send in the original as well. And here's the original photo. And what we see here is that this is echoing exactly the same thing that we had with Rosemary back at the beginning, which is basically the advantage of having a camera with an incredible number of megapixels. So Robert's camera has also got about 45 megapixels. So in the original photo, he's able to zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and then crop. However, having said that, once you crop it that far, the reality is too small to print up. So this here is pretty much maxed out. He's tidied it up, given a little bit more contrast, played with it in the editing to make it stand out as best as it can, and it's a really good web size photo. And if you put this into any of the online web competitions, do this in PhotoCrowd or Guru Shots or ViewBug or something like that, I'm sure it would do really well, Robert. How you get in closer, you would really need, as you say, the tripod and a zoom to get in, but you do have this problem of the fact that because you're using a wide aperture, the slightest forward or back and it's going to be out of focus. It's also moving at high speed, so it's an extraordinarily difficult one to get. The patience you've got to have, and doesn't surprise me that you shot off 800 photos. You might be exaggerating, you probably aren't. I could easily imagine shooting off 800 photos just to try and get one that I thought worked. So extra smug points to you there for your patience and tenacity and keeping going with it. So nice one there, Robert. Russ says, in a comment on Roy's one, works brilliantly in black and white, lean lines, diagonals, and dinosaur feel too. It does actually have that kind of dinosaur feel, doesn't it? Russ says, stunning this one, Robin. And then only 800. Sandra says, amazing difference between the two photos as well. So yeah, but thanks for sending me the original on that one as well. And Robert says, I'm not actually exaggerating the number of photos. I'm not surprised. Do delete all the ones that are out of focus though, because the amount you're going to be taking up about a 4 terabyte hard drive just on that one shoot at this point. Okay, on to then our final image, a couple of images in fact, and these are from Andy, and then I will tell you about what I'm going to be doing with the future for the future of Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, so don't rush off too quickly. So now Andy also sent it, well, what I was going to know, I'll tell a lie. Andy didn't send in 2 photos. Andy sent in 1 photo, and then after a week or so changed his mind and sent in another photo, which I thought was it made me smile, because I know that feeling. It's like the photo I showed you of mine earlier, which I say that's my current favourite, and come back tomorrow and I may well have changed my mind. And it's difficult because also what happens is what it is we're chasing. Sometimes we're chasing a photo, we get that photo and we are so pleased with it, but then it doesn't take long for us for that we're pleased with it to wear off in a way. We've chased it, we've got it, we're satisfied, and now we start chasing the next thing. So anyway, but I will show you both because I do think Andy's created a couple of really lovely photos here. So this one, Andy put it, this was his first one that he put in, where he said, trying to get the, so he put this one in before Christmas and said, getting it in early before the mince pies and port kick in. This one was titled Portrait of an Artist. It's an image of local artist Mario Mendoza taken in a studio. I'm trying to capture the artist at work. However, once you add an actual painting into the image, it became too visually confused for me. I pared down the lighting to a minimum and positioned him as if he's contemplating a canvas out of shot. I'm fairly new to using lighting and working with models, and I think this one works best overall. So that's great, and I think it is a very it's a staged working out that what you know what you were chasing. You've created the light, you've created the pose, you've created the posture in order to get that kind of staged image of the artist contemplating the canvas and about to set to. Interestingly, I noticed Pat wrote a comment on this saying, "This is great, but I've never worked with an artist who didn't get some kind of paint on his person." And I suppose, which is an interesting comment, because in a way, if you're going for a more kind of slightly more documentary realism, chances are he would either have an apron on or an old shirt, or that shirt would have a few paint splatters on it. Certainly his thumb going through the thing would have paint on it. But then, are you going for that? Because this is also a clearly posed photo. This is the photo which is in the style of a painting itself. You know, you could easily imagine a painting of an artist like this. It is staged tableau, staged narrative photography, this. And I know this is kind of what I do all the time. And I think it's really good. I like the lighting you've got. I like the catch lights in his eyes, and that notion of the single light. If you've got another light or you've got a reflector, it's more subtle. It's not obvious, so it feels like there's a single light coming down, and that again tends to reflect a more painterly style of image. However, having a couple of weeks on it, he then moved on to this one and said, okay, having had a few weeks to ruminate on my best shot, I'm going to swerve to a different image. Although I've spent a lot of this year focusing on studio work, my first passion is documentary photography. This image is one of a series taken at Paul's Barber shop in Liverpool. It hasn't changed much since the 70s, and he kindly let me spend a day photographing the shop and customers and recording audio interviews as part of an installation. What a project. Sounds amazing, Andy. And I think that that idea then that you can set up in a barber shop, take the photos, do audio interviews, sounds like an amazing project. A lot of fun. And so this picture is of Paul cutting the hair of a homeless guy who had some mental health issues. Everyone who came in had a story to tell, and it was a privilege to hear and record in images and words. And he also goes on to say, if you're interested, you can see some of the images and transcripts on his website. So I'll tell you what I will do. I will just copy that. I'll drop these into... where are we? I'll drop this into the comments as well. So hopefully then you can... if the comments are there, I'm not sure. Did the one that I posted earlier crop up? If it isn't, I'll tell you what. I'll maybe pop these links into the comments of the YouTube one rather than the chat comments as well. But I'll do that afterwards. I'll put the link in so you can go and check out Andy's website and take a look at more of the... not that one yet. Let's do that one. That's what I was trying to check out more of Andy's photos. Because Andy, I will say that I went and took a look, and there were some fantastic photos there, and it's a great project. It's real, and I think that it's one of those things that Andy's particularly good at with the street photography is capturing that sense of being there and of being there with real people. And it's the studio photography is also great. It's not to say one is better than the other. it's an entirely different beast. It's a different genre, and it's a different style of taking photos, requires a different skill set, a different lighting set, a different personality and interaction set, and they are two different styles of photos, and it's and that's great, I think, because then you're stretching yourself in different directions. Sometimes there's overlap, but very often there isn't. And with this, again, with a documentary thing, you're always working with available lighting rather than being able to move the lighting. So totally different kind of thing. But yeah, great photo, and I really liked the whole set there. So that's so thank you very much for sending those in. So smug points to you for both, double smug points then to you there, Andy, for those. So great set of images. Okay, comments then. Sandra says amazing difference between the two photos. Oh no, that was talking about the. I was talking about the hummingbird. Where do we go? Oh, Russ says, I really like this one, Andy. The lighting is great and the props tell the story. Becca says, I love this. It's intriguing. Andy says, thanks, Russ. Robert says, love this portrait, wonderful colours. Peter says, nice. Sandra says, nice portrait. And John says, great portrait with great lighting on the painting. Then I think we move over to the next one. And Maggie says, love the hand. Maggie always loves the hands at work with these things. Russ says, very different style to this one, but both are greater in their own way. Sandra says, really good documentary photo. I think this is the stronger image, although both are good. Maggie says, I really like the idea of being at work rather than the pure pose. And Andy says, cheers. Cool. So what a fantastic start to the year. To reflect back on, on these amazing images from the past year. I think we did this last year. I'll probably do it next year again. I always think it's really a fun thing to, when you get to the end of the year, to look back and go, well, how far have I come with the photography? What have I achieved? You can think of, and then that acts as the base for saying, where do I want to take my photography next? And we do want to take our photography somewhere next. None of you who watch this, and none of me who sits on this side, ever feels completely satisfied, like we reached a point and go, right, that's it. I've got as good at the photography as I ever need to be, and I'll just now carry on doing things at a level. We don't. We constantly improve, and each level we improve, we then discover there's further levels to improve. And there is something in doing photography about the notion of mastery. Mastery never ends, but it becomes something we continually chase. And I think that's part of the wonderful thing about photography, is what keeps me going. If I felt I would ever kind of reach a level and then level off and stay there, I would get bored with it. So we hopefully this time next year will be even further along with our photography, and then the year after further along again. What are you chasing? Where do you want to go? And how can I help? This is the big thing now. You watch these podcasts. These podcasts are here to help you. And my photography has also been improving dramatically over the last 2.5 years since I've been doing these podcasts. I'm aware of the improvements. And I'm also aware of being able to help more as well. So what I've decided to do, and this is now coming on to the where we're going next, I realised I've been doing a lot of reflecting over the last 3 weeks about these podcasts, what I get out of them, what you get out of them, what I think the speciality is. And what I've realised is it is the feedback side of the photos, which I think is really what is so special about these podcasts. This is the bit you don't really get elsewhere on the internet. It was very, very difficult to get elsewhere on the internet. I joined a Facebook group recently, which was talking all about critique and feedback. And when I joined it, and it was 4 people who were basically posting exactly the same kind of images and all saying more or less exactly the same kind of thing every time to each other. And it just felt like this little closed circle. And I ended up coming out of the group because I realised there wasn't a way in. And it's very difficult to get decent feedback on your photos. Well, we have a lovely group here, and I think you could. So what I'm going to do now is, from now on, most of the podcasts I think are going to be critique or feedback only. So what I want you to do is take this opportunity. Send me your images. Send me your images every week if you want. If I get two, I will probably cap out around about 6-ish images a week. If I get more than 6, then I will kind of have to make a juggle and decide which ones I will use. Maybe some will get taken over to the following week. But this is your opportunity. Now, the flip side of this is if you don't send me your images, podcasts are going to be very, very short indeed. But this is your opportunity to really, where do you want to go with your photography? Where are you struggling? What kind of feedback do you want? This is the place to do it. So don't be frightened of sending in your images. Okay, one of the best ways to improve is to get the feedback on your photography, to go out and do the photos, and then to get another pair of eyes onto it. Because as we've already talked about, we see our photos in a different way to the way other people see our photos, but other people see them differently depending. A photographer is going to look at your photos in a different way to your mate who knows nothing about photography is going to look at your photos. So keep that in mind. So as of next week, I might occasionally do challenges. I might occasionally show you bits and pieces of my own work if I've done an interesting shoot. But the majority from now on, I think, or at least for the foreseeable future, is going to be critique or feedback only podcasts. So send me your images, either if you're part of the Facebook group, because there's a Facebook group, Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, type that into Facebook, you can find it, and post your images in there, or email me, kim@kimayres.co.uk. kim@kimayres.co.uk, and tell me a little bit about the image, where you're struggling with it, or what kind of feedback you're looking forward for, and we will move forward with it. So I look forward to that. In the meantime, if you find these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining, and you would like to contribute in any other way, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is certainly one of the ways you can do it, and it's always appreciated. Meg's put in a comment for me saying you've done amazingly well with your podcast, Dad. Thank you, Meg. Do appreciate it. Right, okay, well, Happy New Year once again to everybody, and hopefully I will see you all next week, and as many of you as possible. Get your photos in. Let's take this year forward and use this podcast, the Understanding Photography, as a way to advance your photography. I know some of you don't always have the opportunity to be here on a Sunday afternoon to actually watch it live. Don't let that stop you. If you're a regular part contributing to the Facebook group, sending emails, being a part of it, then you're a part of the group, and be a part of it. Put the photos in, allow this podcast and your peers, the people in this podcast, to help you advance your photography. Russ says, epic session today, Kim. Great as always. Happy New Year. And Stacy says, my photography club members have a small group of individuals that take learning and editing photography to a different level. Always enjoy. See you next week. And Peter says, well done all. Excellent. Well, thank you very much once again. Press buttons and get ready to do all that. Last few thank yous. And see you all next week. And get your photos in. And Happy New Year. Take care. Bye-bye.